The headlines, whether the Jazz should have taken time out, the story really should be 7 straight quarters of really good basketball. It's next on Locked On Jazz. Bum 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 bum.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps as well as on YouTube. We also have a daily newsletter now that is available for you for free, comes right to your inbox, gives you everything you need to know, plus national articles from Katie Heindel, exclusive to the newsletter, exclusive fantasy tips from Josh Lloyd, links to all the most important stories. It is all there for you. Go to lockedondaily.com or hit the QR code on the bottom of our YouTube. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return. On FanDuel, new customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's show, Trends Monday, always a lot of fun to see. Walker Kessler has been just terrific, and we'll continue to look into that. Ironically, some of his numbers are going the wrong direction. His visual performance is heading in the right direction. To timeout or not to timeout, that is the question. But I'm starting today with 7 quarters of really good basketball by the Utah Jazz. So we played Dallas on Saturday without Luka Doncic. But Dallas without Luka Doncic is the 3rd best offense in the NBA. We'll see this probably coming up in Trends Monday. And they hit us early. They're coming off a blowout of the Knicks. They're feeling good about things, and they just wax us in the first quarter of that game. And we go down 20, and Dallas's offensive rating is a 154, and our offensive rating is an 84. And they've just hit 9 out of 12 from 3, scored 40 points, missed 10 shots, get 4 of them as offensive rebounds. The Jazz are 2 of 9 and 10 of 26 overall. And you're thinking, oh my goodness. And actually, that spurs on the 7 best quarters of basketball that I've seen from the Jazz this year. That's pretty great. Because they had just gotten whacked. And when you've lost, at that point, 6 of 7, and you haven't had a lot of positive accolades for what you're doing, and somebody comes out and just blitzes you, it's pretty easy to be like, yeah, here we go. And they did the opposite. They came out and played the second quarter with an energy and ferocity and intensity and couldn't make a shot and stayed in that mindset. They held Dallas to 6 of 22 and 3 of 12, some level of just regressing to the mean. But what's most impressive about this performance is they did this while it wasn't going right on their end. Micah Potter came in, hit a few shots. Love to see these getting rotation minutes. So deserved, so earned. But Jazz went 8 of 25 in that second quarter and stuck with it. Dallas, without Luka Doncic and Klay Thompson, is a really good defensive team. Like, they don't have a defensive weakness there. So, third quarter comes out. Dallas scores 30, kind of plays their regular game. Jazz limit them from threes. Kyrie gets 2 of them because he's Kyrie. Jazz keep him off the free throw line. They shoot 52%. And the Jazz still can't shoot straight. They go 8 of 20 from the field, 4 of 11 from 3. They just cannot shoot. Lowry, either because his biorhythms are off or his leg's not right with a new baby or whatever, the biorhythms related to the new baby, the leg related to the Victor Wembanyama shot to the inside of the knee. He's missing by miles. And the Jazz stay in it. They get outscored by just 3. And then in the fourth quarter, they stay tight again, still not making shots. Like Jazz went 0 for 10 from 3 in the third quarter of that game. The Jazz offense that night ends up with a offensive rating of 97. They're like it's one of the worst single offensive performances by any team all year. And yet they kind of hung in the game. That's not something. Quentin Grimes goes bonkers in the first quarter. They kind of hung in the game. That is not something that I thought, honestly, this team could do. And not something that I generally thought this team, or any team, not just this team. That sounds like there's something specific to this team. That's just not something that I would think a team that had lost 6 of 7 would do. So to me, that's pretty great. That was like, okay. And Will Hardy came out post-game and was like, that's my favorite game of the year. And I'm generally a guy who's not a big believer in the down 20 stats. You've heard this from me before. Like when we go down 20 in a ball game and then have like a surge in the fourth quarter, kind of doesn't warm my heart. I might have to change my opinion on that, actually, because I do think that a lot of what we're seeing right now is pieces of the puzzle that are coming together, that came together in the second half against the Clippers and second half against the second half against the Clippers and second half against excuse me, against the Lakers, in which I do think that some of those things were learned. Put it in perspective. If you have an offensive rating under 100, it's happened 74 times this season. The teams with an offensive rating below 74 are 5 and 69. Okay? You're not winning. So, and if you have an offensive rating below that, and the Jazz offensive rating that night was a 96.9. It's probably because you just didn't shoot it well. Somewhat Dallas is really good defensively. Give Dallas some credit, but you're just not winning. 5 and 69. But the Jazz stayed in the game. And then I thought last night against the Lakers, they were just good the whole night. If you look like quarter by quarter offensive and defensive ratings, first quarter, Jazz offensive rating was 112, Lakers was 113. Okay, that's like right on league average of a normal game. We actually haven't had a lot of those this year. The league average offensive rating right now, if you just take the 15th team in the league, it's the Miami Heat. Their offensive ratings are 112.8. Okay, we just played an average. Both teams played an average offensive game. Second quarter offensive rating was a 108. Lakers was a 104. Third quarter, both teams' offense made some more shots. Lakers was a 128. We were 120. In the fourth quarter, we held the Lakers' offensive rating to 100. Ours was a 115. Like, that's just a really consistent, solid basketball game. And the Dallas three quarters does start with you allowing 40 points and getting down by 20. And getting down by 20 is a tough way to win a game. In fact, surprisingly not impossible, but a tough way to win a game. And so for the Jazz to come through and play what I just think we got 7 straight quarters of high energy, high competitiveness. The Lakers physically, when we were in LA earlier, just beat the Jazz to their spots, beat them off their spots, blew up every handoff. You just look like the little brother. That didn't look like that last night at all. And I thought the most interesting thing last night, listening to Jake Scott and Tim Lacombe on the postgame show, was the players know it. To me, that was what was interesting. Listening to the players postgame last night, went home and heard Keontae on the postgame show, and then listened to the others, thanks to our crew, the content team that puts them together. The players know that they played with more competitiveness. The players know that they played more engaged. The players know that they played smarter. And I think that that's really important, because I think you'll see that carry over. Now, like Tuesday, Oklahoma City, NBA Cup, we're on the road. That has every script to be ugly. They're really good. We're short. Like, we got guys that are battling it. I'm rooting for them. I love it. But we got some guys that are not bona fide established NBA players right now playing. And they're trying to prove that they are bona fide established NBA players, which is fun to watch. And I'm all in. But, it's a debatable concept of whether any of the 5 guys coming off our bench right now are NBA rotation players in a year. That's what they're trying to prove right now. Okay, that's a lot. So we're going to have some bad nights still. We got you're playing 80 minutes a night of non-NBA rotation minutes or not proven NBA rotation minutes at this point. You're going to have some nights where it goes sour. Oklahoma City, pretty loaded. Could be one of them. We'll see. All right. Should have Will Hardy called a timeout at the end of the game? Break down the situation. I'm probably going to bum you out and be a pansy and tell you that I kind of understand what Will did, but I'll give you a little bit of a twist on it. Next on Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross and in Logan. The Chevy truck, it's Americana. The Chevy truck is frankly beautiful and the best truck on the market. And that's what makes Chevy so special. And then you add the Murdochs, 85 years now in Utah, making sure you have no regrets, being there for you, being a member of the community, always remembering that before everything else. Well, that's what you get, a great combination at Murdoch Chevy. Located in Woods Cross and in Logan with some fabulous deals right now. The 2024 Chevy Silverado's got 1.9% APR taking place for you. Also, 0% for 60 months APR on the Blazer, Equinox, and also the 2024 Silverado. So all of those are available for you right now at Murdoch Chevy. Located in Woods Cross and in Logan. Email me first at dlock09@gmail.com so that we can make sure that you get the VIP treatment that you deserve over at our good friends at Murdoch Chevy. Today's edition of Locked on Jazz is brought to you by BetterHelp. Convenient, flexible online therapy. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon. NBA. When I talk about therapy, I think about it as performance enhancement for the brain. Same way you go to the gym, same way you read a book, same way you try to increase your vocabulary, same way you try to keep your length, all of it. The thing about BetterHelp is it's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Fill out a brief questionnaire. You get matched to a licensed therapist. You work with that therapist. Here's the cool thing. You don't like it, you switch anytime for no additional charge. Try that in your hometown. So find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba to get 10% off your first month. Visit BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. Thanks so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. Free daily newsletter at Locked on Daily. Please feel free to grab that. Sign up. It is free. It comes to your inbox. It's got exclusive national coverage from Katie Heindel. Good piece on the Minnesota Timberwolves the other day. They'll be interesting to look at in our Trends Monday, since we have their pick. Trends Monday is going to be really interesting. All right. So LeBron takes a, frankly, fairly ill-advised three-point shot with 11 seconds left, and the Jazz rebound, and they're down 1. Will Hardy traditionally is a believer in letting the guys go. There's some math backs this up. Excuse me. Out of a timeout, defenses are set. Particularly late game defenses are set. With a timeout with 7 seconds left, if they have a pigeon on the floor, somebody you shoot after all the time, they're taking them off the floor. And yes, you get to diagram your play and try to figure it out, but they'll probably have their best players on the floor. Out of a timeout, the average points per possession is 0.98. It's probably lower in that circumstance. Transition, which to some extent you have in that circumstance, is 1.14. Okay? So a transition possession is about 25% more efficient than about 22% more efficient than out of a timeout. So that's the fundamental math there. Is particularly take the Lakers, who we talked about all night on the broadcast, last in the NBA defensively after a miss and after a defensive rebound. Makes a lot of sense. The only reason I would say to not do it, to not let them just run it out, is that they're young, inexperienced, and I'm not sure there's a lot of guys in this roster who you think are going to make the best decision in that circumstance. And so when you see Colin with the basketball for his 35 million strengths, you're not utterly convinced that that's his strength at that moment. And Keontae, who has a turnover problem and has a tendency, because he's young and get frantic, maybe that's the reason why. And I think that rears its head when Colin takes the dribble backwards, retreat dribble. I think that lack of certainty that they'll make the right decision is what kicks into Will Hardy's head and why he calls timeout. Which, if that's in your head, then maybe you should have called timeout to start. But fundamentally, the math says, and everyone knows, you're better off not letting them set up. You're far better off not letting J.J. Redick make a substitution to get his 5 best defenders on the floor. So it's just tricky. I will tell you as the play-by-play announcer, if you hear my call, which I probably could give you, you can tell that I'm looking to Will Hardy to see if he's about to call a timeout when Colin veers left and takes a retreat dribble. To me, I'm like, call timeout. This place going nowhere. You got to call timeout. And he does. So I am the only area where I'm going to be critical here is just at the 11-second mark. That just this young team, amount of guys, do you trust their decision making? Like, do you call timeout there? Inbounding with 11 seconds, a lot easier than 2.1. Will also was hoping to get that timeout with 4 or 5 seconds left, not with 2.1. And again, on the play-by-play call, I thought he had it a lot earlier. It's a pretty fascinating moment, and it gets our attention, and we did most of postcast on it last night. In a bigger concept, it's one of 190 possessions last night. Certainly has a massive impact on the game. But I thought, it's going to overshadow what I thought was 4 really good quarters of basketball. I am not entirely convinced, by the way, that Colin Sexton gets that layup if Will Hardy hasn't called. I think I'd have to watch it. It's hard to see it. There's no place for me to see this. To me, it's pretty clear that, at least when I was seeing it, that the Lakers know Will Hardy's calling timeout, and they pull out of the play. As I said last night on the post-game show, on postcast, I like to have a consistency in logic. And my consistency in logic is I'm not that trusting of this group. So I probably call timeout. On the other end, there's a coaching aspect to it, which is, well, how do you end up trusting this group? And how do they learn from this? So I think that's my comment on last night. Walker Kessler's playing great. Walker Kessler, if you want development of young players, Walker Kessler is a bona fide 25-minute a night big guy that on certain nights plays 35. And last night was one of them, and the night before was one of them. He's really playing great. Against Dallas, he had 18 points, 10 rebounds, and assists, 5 blocks, 3 steals, was 7 of 9 from the field. And last night, he was 6 of 6 from the field. So he's 13 of his last 15 from the field. He had 13 points and 10 rebounds and 2 assists and 2 blocks last night. He's just absolutely looks the part right now. He's making nice plays. He's passing out of traffic. He's grabbing plays and finishing in one motion. He's impacting defensive plays in multiple ways, both in multiple moments, and in multiple actions, the way Rudy used to. He's just terrific. It is a really cool story for the work that he's put in, the offseason time he put in, and what he's been able to do for this team and from the Jazz standpoint, like, I think we're going to do this tomorrow. I think we're going to just kind of recalibrate tomorrow, 20 games into the season, of where we are, what's going on. We're 4-16, but like, let's go remember what the point of the season was and what guys are doing. Walker might be the biggest. Tomorrow we'll try to figure out like the biggest pause of the year, 20 games into the year, I think, is Walker Kessler and his growth in his offseason. And if you give me this, if the season was wondering about the 7 young players, unfortunately, injury to Taylor is the worst moment of this and sets us back dramatically. But to me, there's no question the biggest positive right now is Walker Kessler. I thought he did a really good job on Anthony Davis last night. The NBA used to have stats, which they promised they would not get rid of, which they've gotten rid of, which really bums me out, of matchups. You used to be able to have defense. They used to have defensive matchups of how players did when guarding other players. It was super useful and valuable, and they've abandoned those. And so I don't have them anymore. But my feeling last night was that Anthony Davis is terrific, but I didn't feel like he gave Walker Kessler the business last night. Like, he has a good line, but you also have to be really careful. Like, where did all those come from? I thought, Drew Eubanks, it looked like it was unfair when Drew Eubanks had to guard Anthony Davis. That looked like it was an unfair matchup last night. According to Second Spectrum, Anthony Davis shot 33% last night when guarded by Walker Kessler. It took 12 shots on 39 matchups. His effective field goal percentage was 33%. So, to me, I think Walker had a great night last night against Anthony Davis. Walker's effective field goal percentage against Anthony Davis was 100%, but a lot of those are second chance points. That's a little misleading. Trends Monday. Always a really interesting thing to suddenly see how everyone's doing over the last 10 days. Now everyone's doing over the last 2 weeks and gets a little feel for what's actually taking place in the NBA. We do it every Monday, unless we do it on Tuesday, on Locked on Jazz. Today's edition of Locked on Jazz, which is a Monday edition, actually doing Monday things. Kind of funny how last week, the reason I said that, by the way, sorry not to lose the focus on where we are, but the reason I said that is because of the fact that last week we did the opposite. Oh my gosh, I have just done something on my screen. I have lost my entire I think I've saved it. I had lost my entire window of the bookmarks were suddenly at the top. My screen was in every which direction imaginable, and the world was coming to an end in my brain there for a second. Today's show, by the way, is also brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. With any $5 winning bet, you can start it off and get yourself rolling with $150 of bonus bets. That's right. New customers get $5, and they get, with a winning bet, you get $150 in bonus bets. So get ready to tackle the upcoming NFL playoffs, the NBA season, with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. So you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel.com, an official sportsbook of the NFL. Thanks so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. Let's do Trends Monday. All right, we started off with the last 10 games, and then we shorten the process down to the last 2 weeks to see what the trends are. They're often similar. But over the last 10 games, the hottest team in the NBA is the Houston Rockets. Can't wait. Actually, today on the plane, Ron and I are going to watch Houston OKC from the last to see what happens. So this is interesting. Houston's the hottest team in the NBA, plus 11 differential. Dallas, playing without Luka for the majority of it, is number 2. Orlando, playing without Paulo Banchero, is number 3. New York is number 4. Boston is 5. Oklahoma City is 6. And Memphis still is sticking around. I'm going to have to buy into Memphis here. Teams that are at the bottom of the heap, the last 10 games are New Orleans, Washington, Charlotte, Philadelphia, and the Jazz. New Orleans, it's over. Philadelphia is worth keeping an eye on. They may join the tank party. Best offenses in the NBA over the last 5 games are New York, who the Jazz stymied, Boston, Dallas, who the Jazz played, Cleveland, and then this is really surprising. Chicago is the 5th best offense in the NBA over the last 5 games, and then Denver. So the Jazz have played 3 of the top 6 offenses recently, 4 of the top 8 if you count the Spurs. They're taking place. Jazz offense is 15th in the NBA over the last 10 games. Teams that can't score right now are New Orleans, Washington, Philadelphia, Charlotte. And then this is the stunner. Minnesota, losers of 7 of their last 10, are a bottom 5 offense in the NBA the last 10 games. That's pretty surprising. Golden State, by the way, is also the 8th worst offense in the NBA in that time period. Teams that can defend right now, Houston's 2 points better than everybody else in the league defensively. They really are getting after people. Orlando, without Paulo Banchero, the Clippers, Oklahoma City, and then Golden State. Memphis is 6th. Teams not defending right now are Chicago, Brooklyn, Utah, Washington, and Indiana, and then Phoenix is 25th in the league defensively in that time period. Let's go to the more recent. So this is now we go to the last 2 weeks. And a lot of these will be similar, but you get a little bit more micro trend. So the hottest team in the NBA over the last 2 weeks is the Knicks, who the Jazz beat in that stretch. Memphis, Orlando, Dallas, and the Clippers. The Orlando-Dallas thing's really interesting. Both of them have lost their primary offensive scorers and somehow are still fine. Over the last 2 weeks, Orlando's offense is 11th. For the season, it's 22nd. Banchero's not efficient, by the way. The thing that's changed in Dallas is their defense has gotten better. Teams that are struggling over the last 2 weeks: New Orleans minus 24, Washington, Portland, Indiana, and Detroit. Utah comes in next. Offenses in the last 2 weeks are the best in the NBA: New York, Denver, Dallas, Memphis, Chicago again, and then Milwaukee. And that's my thing on Milwaukee. They've got to be, they're 6-0 in this stretch. They've got to be an elite offensive team. Offenses that can't score: New Orleans, Washington. Minnesota in the last 2 weeks is 28th in the league offensively. That's the big takeaway here. Golden State's 27th, Charlotte, and then Atlanta. Best defensive team: Clippers are actually better defensively in the last 2 weeks in Houston than Orlando, Golden State, Oklahoma City, and Miami. Teams that are not defending: New Orleans, Chicago, Washington, Indiana, and Portland. So nothing too eye-opening on the defensive end. The big story would be Minnesota's numbers. Sacramento's numbers are the other one that's interesting. Sacramento's lost 6 of 7. They're just kind of mediocre at everything. They're 21st in the league offensively and 18th in the league defensively. Just mediocre at everything. That is Locked On Jazz today. Thank you so much for tuning in, being a part of the program. Go sign up for the newsletter at lockedondaily.com. We're excited to bring it to you today. In addition, if you are not following me on the socials, it's DLock09. It's on X, it's on Instagram, it's on Threads, it's on Blue Sky. Whichever one you're comfortable using, please follow me there. And if you have not subscribed or followed our program yet, please do. On video, we'll send you the first ever national 24/7 NBA channel on YouTube. It's called Locked On NBA. If you're on audio, check out the 2 editions of Locked On NBA every day. Have a good one.